Good morning. My name is Diana Shad. I'm the director of the Family Business Alliance, actually the outgoing director. We're in the midst of a transition. So this will be my last event, which I have loved my time at FBA and have loved getting to know all of you and encourage you to find me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'd love to keep in touch. We have over 140 people registered today, so we're excited for such a great turnout. From technology standpoint, we are live streaming from Jackson Hole, Wyoming with Fred Keller, and we're working out of the chamber. So I do ask that you please be a little patient with us. If you can't hear us or if there's a problem, send us a chat and we'll try to fix it as soon as possible. And also, just so you know, we will be sharing the PowerPoints and we will be sharing the recording of this after the event. And we also have a few websites that we'll be sharing with you. So check your email, we'll have those for you. I did want to mention that Robin Burns will be taking on the role of the new director, effective immediately. She's phenomenal. She comes from a family business. She grew up with a restaurant business and her husband has a packaging business now with his brothers. She has been an underwriter with Rhodes McKee for the last 7 years and has worked with FBA. So she knows us well and it's going to be a terrific transition. So we welcome Robin. She'll be ending the program today, so you'll get a chance to meet her. I do want to take a minute to thank our underwriters, our platinum underwriters, our Warner Norcross, BDO, and Fifth Third. Thank you for your support, especially during these very challenging times. I'd like to thank also our gold underwriters, Varnum, Brightstar, Chase, and Welsh & Associates. And as everybody knows, the last couple months have been difficult, and our underwriters have been instrumental in our survival, as well as all of you with renewing your membership. So thank you so much. It is my pleasure this morning to introduce Bruce Young, who will be our moderator with Fred Keller. Bruce has many hats today. He is an underwriter. He's an attorney with Warner Norcross, who's an underwriter of FBA. He is a third-gen family member of Beeler Young. He is one of my favorite board members. He is our treasurer and has walked me through, not our treasurer, our secretary, and has walked me through many difficult situations with FBA. And he also happens to be a friend of Fred's and knows Fred well. So you were the perfect person to have join us today. So thank you so much for joining us. And I will pass over the microphone to you.
All right, well, thank you. And let me just add my welcome to our 14th annual Family Business Alliance annual forum. And a particular thanks to our keynote today, Fred Keller. You know, just a little bit of background about Fred. He's a West Michigan native. He started Cascade Engineering in 1973, just 6 employees in a small building that has grown to 1,600 employees in 15 facilities, both in the U.S. and abroad. And what's special about him and why Fred was a perfect person for this segment in our series this year has been leadership. And this 4th quarter program is about leadership in the community. And, you know, Fred and Cascade Engineering have done some remarkable things, combining financial performance with also doing important work in social and environmental areas. And I'm going to let Fred be the one to talk more about that. But a couple of things that Fred might not tell you. He served as an executive in residence at the Ross School of Business at U of M. He just finished up 17 years as a visiting lecturer at Cornell's MBA program, teaching about sustainable business. He's served on some significant nonprofit boards, including the Kellogg Foundation, the Ford Presidential Foundation, some significant businesses like Meyer and Fifth Third Bank, and is a leader of a number of other initiatives like Talent 2025 and K-Connect. He's been part of the U.S. Department of Commerce Manufacturing Council, including serving as chair for a couple of years under both Presidents Bush and Obama. One thing you may not know, he's got a blog, purposeandprofit.net, and I encourage you to take a look at that. And there's a link at the Cascade Engineering website if you didn't get that. He has a TED Talk, and if you just Google TEDx and Fred Keller, you will find that. Fred and Cascade Engineering have many awards and recognitions, that I'm not going to try to list, but many of them are for just being very good at what they do, and they are. But a lot of them are for being creative and innovative, and they've done a number of different things. So, one just further thought, and I don't want to steal Fred's thunder, but I think it's kind of hard to do that, as you will see. But there's a theme to listen for that I'll say, and these are just almost words out of Fred's mouth, that business has an opportunity to change the world for the better, not because it must, but because it can. And some great thoughts, and Fred is going to expand on that. So we're going to move to, just walking through a few questions with Fred that I'll tee up and that Fred can then respond to. So just to start out, can you just give us a little history of Cascade Engineering and the inspiration behind it? And since this is a family business organization and program, I just have to ask the question about your father had a successful business at Paragon. Was that ever in the picture for going there as opposed to starting off on your own? So, Fred?
Well, Bruce, thank you so much. It's really a joy and an honor to be with you all today, this morning. Thank you for letting me do it from Jackson Hole. Saves me a trip through the perilous air. And it also is a wonderful opportunity for you all to understand why I enjoy it so much out here in Jackson Hole. It's a beautiful day out here today. At least it will be as soon as the sun comes up. And we look forward to having some time today just talking about Cascade and some stories. But I also hope we can get to the theme of why I think I'm so passionate about the theme that Bruce just talked about. And Bruce, we go back quite a ways. If it's okay to talk about how our families used to take us into church together, and you had the pew just a few pews in front of us, and you seemed to always be there first. But thank you for the long time friendship. Cascade was really something that is quite different the way we started back then, as opposed to the way things start today. I did not have a full-blown business plan. I was not pitching a bunch of folks to find some capital. It was one of those things that I was living in Connecticut at the time. I had just had our first child. Larissa was months old at the time that we moved back to Grand Rapids. And my father and mother had I think I learned later, plotted the idea that they'd like to have their son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter nearby, and thought maybe it'd be a good thing if I were to participate in the business there. I had been in the metallurgical line of field for 6 years at Pratt & Whitney Aircraft, and had done some good work, but I was prepared to do something on my own. I was part of a 60,000 person organization, and I'd really like to be more back into the manufacturing world. I loved my father. He was an incredible influence in my life. He was one of those that you would hear about as a self-made man. He had probably a 10th grade education, probably was dyslexic. They didn't know it, but they just thought he wasn't so bright, and he was really very bright, and worked his way from, as a child, being in World War I, when that war broke out, and a little bit too old to be in the Second World War, but was a master mechanic during that time and started his own business right after the war. So I just respected the heck out of him. But I also knew that I was in a different generation. The 60s were a different time. So we struck a deal that said, in effect, I wouldn't work for him and he wouldn't work for me. Maybe that's familiar to some folks in the family business world. But he nevertheless was my backer, and introduced me to the bank. and we were pretty successful from year one in making plastic injection molding work in a very interesting time. So that's the basic kind of start that was there.
All right, thank you. A big part of Cascade Engineering is, what you call the triple bottom line: people, planet, profit. And can you just tell us a little more about that, how you developed it, and how you made it part of the company culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one that I didn't wake up one morning and say all of a sudden I wanted to do people, planet, profit. But it is something that, as a result of my desire to do things differently, and as a child of the 60s, I was pretty convinced that the conventional way of doing business needed some improvement. And so experimented on that quite a bit. And we started I think the biggest one for me was our Welfare to Career program that started really in the mid-90s. Well after we had established ourselves as a reasonable organization, reasonable sized organization. And that we can talk about that more later, but that was the pivotal point for me, where I said, this really works, where being concerned about others is something that actually works very well. And the idea that you can have an organization that considers other stakeholders than just the shareholders is one that is in fact more resilient, more able to address the issues. And when you have a workforce that's very excited and interested in what you're doing, it becomes a positive reinforcing cycle. So triple bottom line evolved out of that. The idea of, I've really focused on social side to begin with, but then the environmental came in, and also that feeds into having a more, as I say, a more resilient and a more productive organization.
Great, thank you. And when you started to get into it a little bit, but Cascade has received a lot of recognition for some of these innovative hiring practices. You mentioned, I think, returning citizens, which focuses on people coming out of corrections and whatnot, and welfare to career programs. So can you talk a little bit more about those and how they have benefited both the company and the community?
Yeah, you bet. So welfare to career is where I more or less started with this, and that was just an experiment. Happened to be walking through the factory one time and talking to a new hire. His name was Ron Jimerson. Ron had just been in a halfway house situation as a counselor, and was more or less burned out. And he wanted this to a place where he could just come to work and not have to worry about all the people. However, he had a heart for people, I could tell it. And we talked about the possibility of hiring some folks from the Hartside area. And he said, gee, I can do that. And he got a van, and he picked up these folks. We had a Michigan van program at the time, and it was relatively low cost, and picked up about 6 folks from the Hartside. And they were all smiles, and we were all smiles, and they lasted about 6 weeks. And we learned that we weren't ready and they weren't ready. And then Stuart Ray, who was at the time had several Burger Kings, said he would like to try a work-to-work program where we would hire folks from him, and he would have them trained up, and we would be able to have them be a part of our workforce. As a result, he would be able to promise them higher paying wages if they stayed with him for 6 months or a year. His turnover rates were huge, as they still are in the burger flipping business. But it was one that started us down the pathway of understanding what it really meant to be in poverty. And we studied that. There was a book at the time still out there, very appropriate book by Dr. Ruby Payne, called A Framework for Understanding Poverty. And it really explains the differences of middle-class experience and those folks who are in poverty, and the barriers they have on a daily basis. And as you learn that, folks in poverty are really, really challenged by all the daily things that they have to deal with. They're really good problem solvers in some respects. So it was that experience that then led us to trying to do that work on our own by having our HR folks be more like counselors to our new hires. And they started complaining, saying, "This is not so easy, Fred. It's a little hard. And in fact, it's wearing us out." And we then had the opportunity with the head of the Department of Human Services at the time, the family business, that was family something. At any rate, he was able to help us get a social worker on site. And Andy Zylstra was his name. And Family Independence Agency is what it was called. And that social worker, Joyce Gutierrez Marsh, was able to really turn things around for us in helping folks when they had a difficult problem in their lives. There was somebody there to help them manage that difficulty, to manage the situation for themselves. And it was really quite beneficial. It was amazing how that particular intervention, along with our working with our supervisors to make sure that they had all the understanding. We had them go through poverty simulation training and having them understand what it was like to be in poverty. So we changed our culture from being a judgmental culture to being a supportive culture. And that really was, for us, the key turning point in making our business really much more fun to be coming to every day. When people know that they're going to be supported, when they know that they're being trusted, and that if they run into a little bump in the road, they're going to get some assistance. That makes all the difference in the world. And we were able to live out our values. So that really, the people, planet, profit thing starts with people in my mind. And then you can go from there. Returning citizens just kind of grew out of that. We actually had a desire to do this work a fairly long time. I remember hiring one person from a work release program, and it didn't work out. And I was a little bit leery of that. But on the other hand, we learned later that there are ways to be able to encourage that kind of hiring without having to have any kind of concerns about whether it's going to work or not. We can talk about that a little later as well. But it was really an outgrowth that took this to scale. Was after the source was established, and I have to compliment Mark Peters. I don't know if he's on the phone or not, or on the line, but Mark is absolutely incredibly important to this community, as he, by his own determination, started the source. And that used a lot of our principles, including the social workers, to be able to support folks as they're going from welfare to a career in several companies now, over 20. And that is an incredible accomplishment that Mark has done. But out of that, he had the 32-2 program. He was looking for 30 organizations to hire 2 people and keep them and track them for 2 years to get some good data on how people returning from incarceration are doing as they are a part of our businesses. And that's turned out to be tremendously successful. I think there are many, many more people understanding that you get really good people by not checking that box that says, have you ever been incarcerated? Have you ever been in trouble with the law? Until the time that you're actually going to be doing, you've determined that you want them to be a part of the organization, and you do your due diligence at that point in time, and you make a determination if that particular offense is possibly dangerous for your organization. And 9 times out of 10, of course, or a very high percentage, that is not the case.
That sounds great. And maybe you've already touched on this, but I know if you have any more examples you'd like to add of how that's helped you hire different or better employees. And if you feel like you've touched on that, we can just move on too.
Oh, that's an easy one. There are so many examples. One I like to talk about easily is Jay Mckinley. Jay came to us from a program at Hope Network. Had been incarcerated since he was 18, got out at about 36, and he had never had a full-time job before. Started out as a machine operator, worked his way to supervisor, and now after several years, he is in our lean team and teaching folks all over the country. We've most recently down in Texas. So I mean, there's just example after example of folks who have done so well at Cascade, and it just makes so much sense when you think about. I can't imagine passing up Jay in today's world just because he'd been incarcerated. He was a guy that was really determined to have a life that he could imagine beyond where he had been incarcerated. And if you look at his record, it's really questionable as to whether or not he would have been incarcerated had he been white. It is we're just so grateful that we have Jay and others that have come to us from this program.
A lot of fantastic stories. So thanks for sharing all of that. So Cascade Engineering has been a leader in environmental initiatives, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that topic near and dear to your heart. I know is sustainability in terms of sustainable business practices. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean the sustainable business has the factors of social and environmental. From the social side, I've talked a little bit about welfare to career and our returning citizens. We also, almost a decade ago, declared ourselves an anti-racism organization. And that has been an interesting journey. There was a question in my mind at the beginning as to why would I need to do that? Why, what's so important? Why, what's the, do we want to put ourselves out like that? It sounds like, in today's lingo, anti-racist is the way people are thinking about it. And I get it. I agree with that. At the time, we wanted to call it anti-racism. We wanted to not be pointed at people, but at behaviors. And so we declared ourselves an anti-racism organization, and we also reinforced the programs we had already been doing since the early 90s, which was to introduce people to the idea that we would not accept racist behavior in our organization. It was punishable as any kind of conflict would be in the organization, and also required all of our supervisors to go through some sort of anti-racism training. We have sent all of our supervisors through Institutes for Healing of Racism. And we also use diversity theater, where we actually use actors to come in and act out for our employees in smaller groups some things that actually have happened within the organization, and ask them to come up with ways in which ask the audience to come up with ways that would be making that a more acceptable situation. So we've been working at that for a couple of decades, but it's work that has resulted in very positive results for us as an organization. I really got the idea of being an anti-racism organization when I was a trustee of the Kellogg Foundation, where they had declared themselves an anti-racism organization, and it gave me the courage to be able to do that. It was at the time I felt a little bit like I needed to be courageous, but on the other hand, it has been something that has been really quite wonderful for all of us to understand that we have been participating, especially as white males, in this world of perpetuating something by not doing something. By being proactive, we can be a part of changing this systemic racism that has been with us for so long. And I'll talk just a little aside on that. The framework I use for the racism work, anti-racism work, is personal, interpersonal, organizational, and then structural. And the work that we're doing individually is personal. We all have a journey to take on this. We have a lot of research, a lot of unconscious bias. It's part of who we are, and it takes work to be able to counter that. Interpersonally, you learn how to say things differently and that are not offensive, that are actually reinforcing. And then organizationally, we as business leaders have a huge opportunity in the organizational side of things to make a difference with all of our employees. And that's where I think is really exciting for this group to be thinking about as family-owned business leaders. This is we have a tremendous opportunity. And then finally, in the structural side, we need to collaborate together. That needs to be with government, business, nonprofits, and figure that out. But business should not be apart from that. We think of that structural work as politician work or of nonprofit work. Business has got to be intimately involved in that in order to make a real difference. On the environmental side, we've done a couple things. We've gone to zero waste now almost a decade ago. We hit zero waste. Took us about 3 or 4 years to get there. But it was a concerted effort by all of our folks, and it was really an empowerment thing. It was a group. Actually, I took a group through my class that I had been teaching at Cornell, and I asked them to come up with a plan, and they came back with going to zero waste, and so they all just took off and started doing it. And they became the Recycle Warriors. And we got to zero waste over about 3 or 4 years, and that means zero. Okay, there's about, we may take one load to the dump, a small load every few months, but it's dramatic. We saved, at the time, we were spending over almost $300,000 a year in taking trash to the dump, and we dramatically reduced that. So that's one program, and the other is use of recycled materials. We just introduced, we've been using recycled materials for a long time, but we just introduced a program called the Eco Cart. Joanne Perkins at our organization has been heading our cart division for long. This is the rollout carts, you take the trash to the street. And she came up with a program where we can certify that every cart has at least 10% recycled content. And these are the bulky ridges like the milk bottles and Tide bottles and all that sort of thing at your curb. At least 10% of it is going there, and we're working on the chemistry to take that even higher. But that's a program that has gotten us actually good recognition at Waste Management and has actually boosted sales.
Yeah, fantastic. Beyond being a living example, how have you attempted to pass environmental stewardship and your passion for that on to the next generation?
Well, it's something we practice every day. I think those of you who are in the family raising business, you just work your principles every day. And of course, we've been doing recycling as long as I can remember in the family, and I think that's followed on. Larissa, Christina, and Susan are all very conscious of that. And Christina, of course, being CEO leader of Cascade, came to the job with a great deal of passion in this area, and along with her social prowess in working and trying to help folks in developing countries. She spent a fair amount of time in Africa and South America and Central America. And she is really easy to have an example of someone who came to the job wanting this work and wanting to be able to do it. And having a framework that was already there, she's just been doing nothing but accelerate that work. So it's been wonderful. It's just live your values and they'll be there.
Great. This is kind of getting back to that theme I mentioned at the beginning, and how many today, and it's obviously been very prominent in our election cycle about how capitalism and free enterprise maybe cannot serve the social needs of a country, and so just interested in you speaking more about how capitalism or free enterprise can advance social issues, and with some of these things that you've been talking about. So if you could just talk more about the role of capitalism and free enterprise and how that connects to advancing social issues.
How much time we got? This is something that I think is absolutely a fascinating story, and one that I obviously worked on as I was teaching my classes at Cornell and diving into the literature and diving into what's available. It's fascinating to me to think about somebody at my age. In my lifetime, if I were to take my lifetime and go back another lifetime, it's the Civil War. It's the start of the Industrial Revolution. And the notion that we are practicing business today, as it's been practiced forever, is a really important non-notion. It is absolutely not the case. We have been evolving capitalism ever since that Industrial Revolution, basically. And it has evolved into a system where back in the 50s, it was the business leaders are pretty concerned about the commons, about everybody in the community and everybody throughout the country. And then starting in the 60s and 70s, Milton Friedman, our wonderful Nobel laureate, said the only responsibility of business, only social responsibility of business, is to make money for the shareholders and let the shareholders decide where that money is spent. That has been a really tough theme that we have followed, and it basically says if you've got the power to make lots of money, go ahead and do it. It's good for the economy. Trickle down economics. Rising tide floats all boats. It's a really dangerous kind of notion, and one that I think we've been following quite rigorously. And only recently, in the last decade or two, when I first started teaching in 2002, there was very few articles about anything around the idea of sustainable business. We had to search. My texts were pretty bland. But the longer I taught, the more this became more dominant in people's thinking, and the more it's been really helpful to have a deeper understanding of what triple bottom line can do for us as an organization, but also for society in general. I recently have read a book. It's called The Upswing, and I highly recommend this book. It starts out with a description of the world or the United States, where there was corruption, rioting in the streets, all kinds of economic disparities. There were you could believe that you were talking about today, and in fact, he was talking about the end of the Gilded Age, which was really an important, this is Robert Putnam, who wrote Bowling Alone, social scientist. He's a social psychologist. He's really good at describing these and did all the research. And he described that at the time of the end of the Gilded Age, around 1910, the world was pretty much very much me-oriented, I-oriented. And during that time from 1910 to about 1965, the middle of the 60s, the time that I was really starting my career, those things had pretty much gotten, all the measurements got better, socially, religiously, the economic disparities, even racial inequities got somewhat better. I was a little concerned about how he put that together, but because it had been so bad, it was actually getting a little better during that time, even during the Jim Crow era. But the point is that starting in the 60s, things started going bad again. And so there was an upswing from 1910 until about the middle 60s, and then it started coming back down. And his point is that we have an opportunity now to really reverse those things. So what am I saying? Generally, don't think that we've been practicing business the same way all the time. It's been changing. And in my view, it's been changing perhaps I think it has been going in the wrong direction. We have to get back to, and we have an opportunity as business leaders. I like to call it corporate social opportunity, not corporate social responsibility, corporate social opportunity. We have an opportunity to really, really make a difference as business leaders, especially as family-owned business leaders. I've done a little kind of thinking around this area, and I've come up with what I call rings of impact. In fact, I've got an article in the Jackson Hole Economics website if you ever want to go there. But it's called Rings of Impact. And basically it starts with this idea that in the center, where we are, our core right now, are profit maximizers. Those folks who really just care about maximizing profit. They're Milton Friedman. They really believe in this work. And they make some positive impact economically in our society, but they make virtually no impact on the rest of society. There's a second ring, which I call thinly veiled profit maximizers. Those are folks who are engaged in CSR. They are trying to, in a sense, convince us as consumers that they are doing good and therefore we should buy more of their products. There's a third ring, and this is where I put family-owned businesses. Largely, a lot of family-owned businesses, we've figured out that there's a symbiotic relationship between doing well and doing good. And then there's a fourth ring where they actually are designing a business to solve a social or environmental problem. And the example I used there is an organization called Everytable. Everytable is in Los Angeles right now. A fellow named Sam Polk, who I got to know after he wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal called that was all about his ascent to doing really well in the hedge fund business. And he discovered that he was addicted to money just as he had been addicted to cocaine during his ascent into this area, and decided to leave that business and start a nonprofit back in Los Angeles. It's a great story, and Sam's a great guy. But he started a company a few years ago called Everytable, and I invested in it. And Everytable's purpose is to have a method for selling healthy food at the price of a Big Mac in this inner cities. Because if you look where the Big Macs are, if you look where McDonald's are, they're heavily invested in the low income areas, and less so in the suburbs. And if you look at the healthy eating places, they're located in the suburbs and very few in South LA and Watts. And so what he did was he created a business as a central commissary. It's a grab and go business. and he sells the same product in the suburbs at say $8.50 a piece, and in the South LA and Watts at $4.50 or $5. And he's able to get a really competitive product, still making some margin, but not as much as he does in the suburbs, still making a margin that is providing healthy food to people that need it. And to me, this is the really interesting approach to business, where you're designing something, he's solving food deserts. And it's designing a business to do that. So we have tremendous opportunity. Long way of saying it, and I'm sorry I talked too long here, but we really have this opportunity as business leaders to really make a huge difference in how we solve the problems of the world right
now. Continue to just love it, especially moving from, CSR to CSO of opportunity rather than responsibility is just a great concept to embrace it as opportunity as opposed to as something we need to do. And just a couple things to mention. There is, for our audience out there, there's a Q&A button as part of the Zoom. We will, shift in maybe 5 more minutes to doing that. So if you want to be sending in some questions, do it through the Q&A as opposed to the chat, and is where we'll be looking for those. I love the article that you were talking about that you mentioned was in a Jackson Hole publication. And just for those who are interested in more, because I'm pretty sure there's a link to that, or maybe you posted it at yourpurposeandprofit.net is where your blog is. And just to help anybody find that too, I think there's a link to that off of the Cascade Engineering website. And I guess while I'm mentioning the Cascade website, a lot of the things that Fred has been talking about, if you just want to learn a little bit more about those, I encourage you to go to the Cascade Engineering website, because it talks about a lot of these initiatives about returning citizens, welfare to career, the other kind of sustainability things about zero waste, and I love sort of the supply chain side of that too, to help with sustainability, not just by not putting a lot of stuff out there that's ending up in a landfill, but providing opportunities, for people to use stuff that would otherwise go in the landfill and create a way to put that sort of back into the system, so to speak. So appreciate of all of this. So I guess one other thing, people may be curious about, you're a certified B Corp. I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, being a B Corp is really been helpful to us as a platform for getting better. That's the way I think of it. I've gotten to know the founders of the B Corp. They've all been in my class at one time or another. There are 3 of them. They're all great. I mean, they started for this. I have great respect. They started this idea out of nowhere, and now they have tens of thousands of folks who are certified B Corps, and they're moving this legislation. In fact, Michigan has now a set of bills that will allow organizations to be registered B Corp. So there's a difference between being registered as a B Corp. That would be equivalent to your C Corp status or your LLC status, or you can be certified. And if you're certified, you have a series of questions you answer, and that gives you a score. And the score really is not a competition. It's merely a point to say above a certain level. It's 80 points, which is relatively straightforward. You are then a certified B Corp, but your objective is to get higher and higher. So that gives you all these areas, from environmental to how you treat your employees, to what your supply chain is, to what your customer-facing work is, and it's very comprehensive, and I highly recommend it. It's a lot of work, but it's also, if you're serious about becoming more involved in becoming a solution to our problems, B Corp's a good place to go.
Since we're a family business organization, something I'm sure people are interested in, that you've, recently dealt with is just the transition in leadership. And you mentioned, Christina becoming CEO leader. And I know you've seen that, at Paragon as well. So I wonder if you could talk to us about, lessons learned or just how that has gone in terms of transitioning leadership to Christina, and how it feels to, be stepping back from that leadership role, especially as a founder of a business. I got to, grow up with that and seeing a transition from my grandfather to my father and the so-called kind of founder mentality and how that can be hard to kind of let go of some of those things. So we'd be interested in hearing a little bit about that too.
Yeah, with Christina having an interest in this was absolutely a wonderful situation. In Christina's case, she was, and we had the general understanding that I think is good practice in the family business world. You're not entitled to anything except an opportunity, is the general concept. No promises of being in any kind of succession. But the idea for her was that she wanted to really make a difference in the nonprofit world. And I should let Christina chime in. If I could do that, we would at this point. But she spent some time in Africa, as I mentioned. She spent some time in Central and South America, working in the nonprofit world. And it was on one of her trips when she went back to Africa to see what the solar installations looked like that they had installed 2 years earlier, that she became to realize when they saw that the installations were not being used, that the nonprofit world may not be the most effective way to make a difference. She went back to Cornell. She went to Cornell. She undergrad was in Boston College, but she went to Cornell's MBA program. I was very pleased to have her in my my sustainable business class. But she went back with the intent of seeing how she could use business to make a positive difference in the world. And then she went into the consulting business after that with Polaris Partners in New York City. Met her husband there, and Andy and Christina came back to Grand Rapids, moved back to Grand Rapids. And I was thrilled that she was interested in this. And then to be able to have her turn out to be not only interested, but good at all the people skills that are required, all the analytical skills that are required to be in leadership. And we moved through several transitions for her, from being a business unit leader to being president of one of our divisions, and then finally taking over as CEO. And it has been absolutely wonderful. She is an incredible leader, and I'm so very proud of her. And I'm proud to be able to have daughter Larissa on the board. She does a terrific job, has tremendous insights, and brings a different perspective, being in the healthcare industry as an architect and consultant in that area, getting her PhD in healing environments and healthy outcomes, and consulting with hospitals around the country now. So it's really been a tremendous family effort. The third daughter, Susan, lives in Vermont, very environmentally conscious. Until recently lived off grid. She finally has broken down and gotten electricity, but is just another wonderful daughter to have in the passive ownership business. I now am an owner in a woman-owned business. So I've been really pleased to be able to have my daughters now owning more than half. I can be voted off the island. But it's a real joy for me to be watching this happen. And to me, the biggest joy is to be able to watch it happen while I'm here, as opposed to figuring that it can't happen unless I'm here. And I'm just really enjoying this. And I'm stepping back. I'm still chair, but Christina and I are really in frequent contact. I love the way she solicits information from me and asks my opinion. And I love seeing what she does with that and how she has made tremendous progress with it.
Fantastic. You know, one, and I think we'll shift now to some questions that have come in.
Okay.
You know, one is, and actually this is referring to a comment you may have made to the person asking the question about, and you've touched on this a little bit, but maybe it's different terminology about how, you know, succession isn't just about setting up the next generation for success, but it's also setting up the retiring generation for success. So I know if you want to talk a little bit more about that piece of, you know, how the, you know, succession, you know, relates to, you know, to your end of that as well.
Well, I think the wonderful thing about age is you learn that, I think you have to ask yourself at some point, how much is enough? And that's sometimes a difficult question for capitalists to ask, because it's never enough. I think that have I feel very, very comfortable where we are. I think that I have no desires to be a billionaire. It is a comfortable life, so I'm very happy where I am. I think that's part of where we need to all seek, is to understand in our competitive world, where can we kind of sit back and say, this is great. Let's be happy here.
In connection with the triple bottom line, you've mentioned a couple of things, you know, which I think more of, you know, the corporate social opportunity with the you know, return to work, welfare to career, but looking more broadly at the issue of the triple bottom line and your hiring practices, are there ways in which, you know, the concept of triple bottom line gets woven into your hiring practices, just in terms of other people you employ, you know, just outside of the couple of programs that you've mentioned?
I'm glad you asked that question. There's a program called Higher Reach, which I strongly recommend everybody to be able to participate in. There's about, I don't know, 25, 50 organizations that are doing it now. It has been operationalized by Talent 2025, but Higher Reach is an incredible program that Bill Manns, when he was CEO of Mercy Health St. Mary's, brought to Grand Rapids. And he's got an incredible story about how he found out that they were doing, basically they're hiring through references. So if you referred somebody, they would hire them. And he thought that was a little bit unique, and that maybe could improve on that. So he brought evidence-based hiring to Mercy Health St. Mary. That's why it's called Higher Reach now. You can learn all about it at Higher Reach. I think it's higherreach.org or something like that. We can get to that website. But I think the critical thing is that after you're really doing evidence-based hiring, so that you are not, everybody's got unconscious bias. So it gets that out of the equation. And as a result, they had of 10,000 candidates that they have hired at this point, they've reduced their first-year turnover by 23%. They've reduced the time to hire by 16%, and they've increased their diversity by 2x. So it's really a dramatic program. And I was talking to Christina about it the other day, and we've had tremendous results at Cascade as a result of employing that. So that's a really good program to use. And
by the way, the Q&A is being used for a lot of people to say, thanks, great program, thank you for sharing. At least one other question on there. I don't know if you're familiar with the book by Rich DeVos called Compassionate Capitalism, or maybe you're at least familiar with the concept there. And so the question maybe is, is that still relevant, and how does that relate to some of the things that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, Rich is one of my heroes. I always admired Rich, and his supportive culture that he developed at Amway was absolutely, I think, stunning. And I've read Compassionate Capitalism several years ago now, but it's right in line with the idea of kind of multi-stakeholder capitalism. And a more recent book that I could recommend, or more recent concept that I could recommend, is this multi-stakeholder capitalism. And the idea that we are responsible, we have responsibilities, we have opportunities with all of our stakeholders is something that I think we need to learn more about. There's actually, I've been working with a gentleman, Nathan Havey, who is a really good documentarian, but also a really good and passionate about stakeholder capitalism. And there are several things now, not just compassionate capitalism, but that fall under stakeholder capitalism. There's I'm going to not remember all the names now, but many of these approaches, Whole Foods, John Mackey's capitalism that he talks about. There are many, many different forms of it. But Nathan has actually started a blog, not a blog, it's what do you call it when people do when it's verbal, anyway. It is I can get you this website.
A podcast?
A podcast. Thank you very much. But it's called the Intrapreneur Accelerator, and I think I sent that to the folks over there. If you don't, we can email it to you or send it to you. But it's a 10 things you can learn about stakeholder capitalism in easy, digestible form. It's really good. It's really worth doing. And it ends with the opportunity to have some folks in your organization, that's why he calls it the Intrapreneur Accelerator, some folks in your organization that could take a course over a period of a year, relatively inexpensively, and be able to be accelerating your organization towards stakeholder capitalism. It's pretty good concept, and I would recommend it.
Okay, one last question that will merge a couple of the questions that came in. You mentioned a couple of things, with some of these initiatives that at first didn't work out exactly as you hoped it would, but you continued to kind of push at it. And so it's about, how do you keep pushing at something like that, both as a leader and, in terms of your own desire to do this, where maybe it isn't working at first, and the impact on culture, especially if there have been some bumps in the road where maybe some others in the organization are saying, I thought, this is another one of Fred's dumb ideas or something like that. Why are we doing this? And just how you deal with that, as a leader and with your culture to kind of like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to find, if this didn't work, now we know one way that doesn't work. So now we're going to find a way that does work.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's one that I think you don't ever.
That's not a short question, is it?
Yeah, it's not a short question. It's not one you get over easily either. Every leader has the danger of having what in our culture became a Fred says, and it's actually can be used by folks as a symbol of power. Fred said that I should do this. And so therefore it must be done. And I think that's a real danger in any culture. So I tend not to, I try not to have many Fred says. There are a few things that are required, but in general, it's really got to be the desire of the person you're talking with. They need to be invested in it. They need to want to do it. So I kind of look for folks who I think are interested in these things, and then I'll suggest that they have an opportunity to work on them. And then if they have a difficulty, I can support them or not. But I think it's a good question. It's not an easy one to answer. I think it's one they need to be very aware of at all times, and not be forcing things in an organization. I think that's the worst thing you can do. I do think you can be a cheerleader for those things that you do believe in, and to support them as they're going forward.
Thank you, and thanks everybody who sent in questions. Appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you so much, Fred, for the example that you are in our community of all the things that you do, and in how sharing with us today, not just these kind of broad concepts and aspirational goals, but how you've actually taken those things and turn them into real action that impacts, not just your business and not the community, but the lives of individuals, both inside your business and in the community. So we can't thank you enough for all that you've shared with us, and appreciate very much all that you've had. And thanks, to participants for the questions as well. So thank you, Fred. Appreciate it very much.
Well,
and so now I'm going to turn it over to our new executive director, Robin Burns, who's going to continue with the program. We're following best practices, so I'm remembering I need to sanitize the mic before I give it to her.
Thanks so much.
And collect my mask. So.
Thanks so much. I'm Robin Burns, the new director of the Family Business Alliance, for those that I have not met or spoken to yet. I want to thank Fred Keller for all of his insightful comments, and to continue this conversation, and to use Fred's words of doing well and doing more. We have two companies here with us today, two fellow members who are sharing their stories of what their organizations are doing to make an impact in our community. I first would like to introduce Christopher Fennema of Kent Companies. Chris is a part of a third generation ownership at Kent Companies, which is a full service concrete contractor whose mission is invest in our people, our customers, and our community. And their mission certainly lives in the numbers. Let me share with you, they've been operating for 62 years, employing 1,500 concrete professionals. They're the 9th largest contractor and participate in 30 annual community grants. In his current role, Chris oversees talent development and asset management, and leads the company's efforts to engage in this important work with local nonprofits. His ongoing commitments to community include participating in trade association advisory boards, a member of the board member, of the Michigan chapter of American Subcontractors Association, leading our very own event planning committee, and assisting with Streams of Hope Food Pantry in planning for their upcoming expansion. So I'll turn this over to Chris.
Best practices,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Right, Bruce? Thank you. Thank you, Robin. Appreciate everybody that's put the time and energy into setting this event up today. Specifically, thanks to Robin, Diane, and Haley for all the work they do. If you folks on the back side of that could see all the hustling that Haley's done, you'd really see how much work goes into this. And also thanks to Bruce and Brad and Fred for being a part of our presentation today. When Robin talked about our purpose statement at Kent, where we're investing in our people, our customers, and our community, that was an intentional effort probably about 10 or 15 years ago to really put our arms around, why do we do what we do? How do we do? Because as a family business, you grow up seeing your fathers and your grandfather and the great work they've done in the community, and also to grow a business. And you want to try to perpetuate that. And at the same time, you want to be able to have some direction as you do that. So we use that purpose statement how we interact with our people, how we interact with our customers, and even more important, how we interact with our communities, because that's where we live and do everything. And as we dove into how do we interact with our communities, we heard a lot of terms that would come around when people would knock on the door or send you a letter: charitable giving, philanthropy, donations, stewardship, and sponsorship. We found it was a little challenging to understand how that fit in what we were trying to accomplish in our community. And what we learned was there's a better way to boil that down. And we focused our attention on what we would call time, talent, and treasure. I want to make sure that, right side? Oh, okay, great. We're all learning as we go here. This is a great shot of our Redford team. They service the Metro Detroit market, and they oftentimes work on historic renovations and revitalizations throughout the Detroit area. And oftentimes these projects are in disadvantaged neighborhoods and are in the midst of renewal. Our team over there will spend weeks at a time at the same building, and they get to know the folks in the community. And oftentimes there'll be homeless and transient folks in shelters and soup kitchens. And as being part of the third generation leadership and having offices all over the country, it's so inspiring to see what your people will do when you empower them to make a difference, and a positive difference where they're at. Without any prodding from anybody in Grand Rapids, these folks in Detroit said, hey, we want to do something out there for these people that we see all the time. So they, on their own, packed up sack lunches and went out to the community and handed them out. That went so well that they said, hey, we want to do a cookout. And so it's just been something that's continued to grow over time. And it's really fun to empower people because that's all they're looking for, is support from their leaders to say, you're going on the right direction, keep running faster. So here's another shot of what they've been doing in their local communities where they work. And then our Dallas team down in Texas, each year they conduct a supply drive in conjunction with our employee appreciation event. And anybody who donates also earns extra raffle tickets to win prizes at the employee appreciation event. There's a couple charities that have the Dallas folks have really put their arms around. One is the Children's Medical down there. That was chosen because a daughter of our superintendent in that area receives treatment for leukemia, and they do an art supply drive. And then another one was the Children's Advocacy Center. We chose them as a partner because of the major expansion that we were doing in our Louisville office. And they have a fall family festival, and we collect candy for their candy drive. So you can see all that good stuff there. And then finally, back in our home city of Grand Rapids, our CEO serves on the board for Derouge, and there was an opportunity for us to participate in the ministry to the Heartside neighborhood by serving meals once a month. And this has been a great team builder. We have a lot of fun going there. You get to know members of the community. We actually have some retired folks from companies that continue to come back and serve with us. And then afterwards, you get together and we pick up the tab for dinner somewhere downtown, and it's just a great opportunity to serve others and also build your team. And then you can see there, another fun part of the community is taking our big trucks out. Sometimes we look at them as our big toys. We're still, little boys playing with big toys. And you get a chance to see there the third generation ownership, and then our children and also our team members that operate the equipment. And it's really fun to be involved in the community and be able to give back and make a better place for all of us to live and work. What we've learned in talking about time, we use terms like the volunteerism, supply drives, the hands-on involvement opportunities, and even the opportunity to educate our employees. In my role, I've had the opportunity to really reach out to our folks and find out what is the stuff that they need more help with understanding, because not everybody had the same opportunities growing up to learn about financial choices and resources that are available for them. And it's very rewarding to help our team all win. That's really where I look, my job is to help everybody win, and winning looks different to each person. And it's important for us to acknowledge that it's not a one size fits all, but it's really meeting people where they're at and understanding what they need to help grow. And so we give back to the community with the time that we put in. We also talk about talent. I touched on it briefly where Jeff, my cousin, serves on the Derouge board. Robin read some of the opportunities that I serve on. We really encourage our leadership at all levels of the company to give back by serving. It's fun for me to get involved with some of these nonprofits on the construction side because it really gives me an opportunity to speak into my passion with construction and to help these facilities that are being built really get the best bang for their buck and also have a very great facility to use. And finally, we talk about treasure, charitable donations that are attached to annual giving or capital campaigns for specific funding requests. What we've learned over time is that there's two ways we approach this giving back. One is organic and one is formal. Organic is the one I talked about earlier with our Redford team, where they come up with an idea and then they send it up the food chain and say, yeah, let's do it. And, that's a great thing because the whole team's bought in versus it's just something that the owners want to do. Then, maybe you don't get the buy-in, but you get the opportunity for the whole team to feel like they can come to the table with a great idea. And then second, we do formal items like we started a campaign a few years ago called Kent Gives Back. And that allows our employees to make a nomination process of charities in their area that they would like to see the company specifically donate financial gifts towards. And then it becomes a voting process. And then in each market, we look at like the top 2 or 3 charities based on the size of the market. And we write specific checks to them. And it's a great way to engage your employees in the process. And then for us, we had to step back and say, when we talk about, giving back, how do we differentiate what we're doing here with the dollars that we spend? And so we look at it as 2 components. Charitable giving, that's where you're giving goodwill gifts. There's no expectation of corporate recognition. It's just the right thing to do. And as a business, as somebody in the community, you have the opportunities to support people that are doing good work in the community that need the financial resources to do it. And second, there's sponsorships. Those are monies that come out of the marketing dollars, and those include logo exposures and recognition that this benefits the organization with the visibility, also hospitality opportunities and other opportunities. We find this is great because we're able to incorporate a lot of our team into this, and oftentimes it's our corporate partners that are asking us to help them support a cause, and so it's a great opportunity for our team to network with other people in our industry and our community and have a fun time in the process. So when we looked at this, we've had an opportunity to kind of bump our heads along the way, find things that really resonate with our team, and maybe you find some things that are just a one-off because you can't be afraid to try things. And so what we found works best for us is to look at the mission and your people and then scope in where you can make a difference. There's so many great opportunities to give back in the communities we work in, but really we want to be able to make a difference, not just write a check and then, walk away from it. And so think about what your strategy could be for your business. Is it sprinkling money in small areas, or is it maybe taking that money, aggregating it, and then putting it towards one main cause that you can really make some big ripples in the pond? Recently, we had an opportunity presented to us to go on a mission trip to Guatemala, and it was brought to us by one of our good customers. And we looked at it and we said, this is a great opportunity. In the time area, we looked at it and said, we've been blessed as a company. Lord's been good to us. We survived a lot of ups and downs over the 60 years we've been in business. What can we do to say thank you? And, rather than just picking small groups of people, we wanted to open up and we just sent an email out and said, hey, here's an opportunity to serve. Here's what we're going to do to make it easy for you to say thanks on behalf of the company. We're going to pay your wages while you're there. We're also going to pay for you to go. And so it really freed it up for people to look at it and say, wow, I get an opportunity to go to a foreign country where there's a great need. I can take the skills I have in construction and I can go there and benefit people that really need the help. And so we opened it up to everybody in the company in the Midwest. And it's been phenomenal to see the people that signed up. There's a few people that have never done any type of mission trip work, whether it's internationally or nationally, and they're frankly kind of nervous about it. And it's great to see the folks that have done this before come alongside them and encourage them and say, you can do this. I'm really excited to see the team do this. They're going to be going down in February. I spoke how, we talked about it checks the box for us: time, talent, and treasure. And then finally, there's a part about collaboration, because there's other contractors from this area that'll be going on the same trip. And we've learned over the years that it's really great to make friends in our industry, especially in West Michigan. There's so many great people here, and the payback that you get from going on a trip is immeasurable. I've had the benefit of going on some of these in the past, and I always feel like I get more out of it than I put in. And so it's a great opportunity. And so for Kent companies, we continue to look where we can invest in our communities and give back. And we thank the FBA for the things that they do to help facilitate more community give back and encourage the family businesses in the area to, again, look for opportunities. We can make this a better place to live and work. Thank you.
I hear the applause. Do you? Thanks, Chris. Excuse me. Next speaking and sharing some of his insights with you is Brad Derouge from Baudville Brands. Brad has been leading the organization for 20 years and the organization has become a key in the world of recognition, products, and programs. Baudville is people inspired. They seek to inspire because they believe that inspired people transform not only companies, but communities. Their mission is thriving. The company has launched 2 new brands, acquired a third, and now operates 4 businesses from the Grand Rapids, Michigan headquarters. In 2020, Baudville was named again best and brightest companies to work for in West Michigan, and also became a great place to work certified. In addition to leading this organization, Brad is also involved in Young Presidents Organization, the American Catalog Mailers Association, and Vaudeville's Helping Hand Charitable Foundations. Please welcome Brad as he shares his story about how they're making an impact.
All right, thank you. Here we are. So I was asked to share a little bit about our approach to charitable giving in the community. And so you've heard from a couple great organizations that I'm humbled to be on the proverbial stage with, and excited to share with you a little bit of our journey. Of course, we won, as Robin mentioned, a couple great workplace awards. And I think a key part of that being a great place to work is our involvement in the community and our giving employees the opportunity to get engaged in our community. And we'll get into that here in a little more detail in a moment. I think it starts with, for us, just a little bit of conversation about the why. Why get engaged in the community? Why have a charitable foundation? And that starts for every organization a little bit differently. Fred talked about the individual from the halfway house who was maybe the catalyst for years and now decades of programs that have ensued in bringing people into their workplace. And that's often the case. The why starts with some small event in a company's history and builds from there. So finding your why as an organization, sometimes it's close to a struggle that an employee has. That is the catalyst for that beginning. Sometimes it's close to the mission of the organization. You hear a lot of food service organizations giving back in that way in the community. And so finding your why, what makes sense for your organization, I think is a critical first part of the journey, because as Chris said, you get a lot of requests. There's an incredible number of great charitable organizations in our community and nationally and abroad. Where do you start? And having a focus to your efforts, I think, is an important part of those efforts being effective. For us, our why actually started pretty simply. We were going to give to charities in West Michigan that impacted children. The shareholders got aligned on that, and for us, that was a key first part of having an effective charitable giving philosophy with different shareholder voices. We wanted to be aligned and on the same page, and ultimately that was a charitable mission that we could get behind. That got more formalized, I think, a decade or so ago into what you see here today, which is Baudville's Helping Hand, a charitable foundation, and reads as follows. Baudville's Helping Hand works to instill hope, dignity, and purpose in the lives of children by partnering with charitable organizations who engage young people in the areas of education, public health, social justice, environmental preservation. So this gives us a mission, and it helps us say yes to some things and no to others, which I think is an important part of being successful in our community giving efforts. Step 2 for us is making the money work. I'll talk in a minute about the kind of big way I think that we do that. But there's other ways that I think are important as you're getting your charitable giving off the ground. We set up a trust, Schwab Charitable Trust account. We determined what the allocation of resource as a percentage of profits that was going to be given annually. And so we moved that money into the charitable trust account. And ultimately that builds over time, and we can not necessarily be reacting to a company raising their hand saying, or an organization raising their hand and saying we have a need, but we have a process, and that process has a set finite amount of resource, and that resource can build over time. And last but not least is appointing a leader and having that process. So not, again, reacting to every individual that reaches out, making a request, but being able to have a single point of contact for that. And really this is running, I guess, from our perspective, our charitable giving efforts like we do any of the strategies and tactics that we're pursuing in our business, which is, we have a destination, we have a plan, we resource that plan, and we appoint somebody to lead it. And it's been really our recipe, I think, for success as we've grown. These are hard things to think about when you're small and when we're by no means a large organization. But I think you start by having the little pieces, like I said, hey, this is gonna be the focus of our charitable giving. This is gonna be how we're gonna resource it. And in time, it builds into a more formal process and maybe a mission statement and foundation like we have. So I want to talk a little bit about making money work and how we do it. And this is really kind of playing off what Chris said in a lot of ways of having a bigger impact. And we had 2 goals as our organization grew and our staff grew and our giving amounts grew, is we wanted to be able to have a bigger impact on a shorter list of charitable organizations. And we wanted to really engage our team in the opportunity to participate charitably in the community. And so those 2 things kind of came together to create the idea that we were going to do a big project every 5 years. And we were going to, yes, do things in between that, but we would apportion a part of that charitable giving or that percentage of profits that we put every year in our foundation to that big project every year, every 5 years. And that worked for us in a couple ways. As a smaller business, we can't have employees out in the community every week or all the time, really. We could sort of focus our effort on a big project and really kind of go all in on that project and do it every 5 years. And that started with a project. I'll just talk about a couple of them with the Habitat for Humanity in 2008, where we fully funded the construction of a home, but also maybe more importantly, provided all the volunteer hours. At the time, we maybe had 50 or 60 employees, so that was a pretty big pull for us. But we'd send employees down, we had photo contests, we'd bus them down for the day, and it was really kind of the first big project that we did like this that was the seed of the idea of this every 5 year thing, but really was so successful for us organizationally in both what we were able to do in the community, but how it brought our team together in a small organization was really phenomenal and transformational for our company. So that was the START project in 2013. We partnered with the eQuest Center for Therapeutic Riding. This is a charity that's near and dear to our heart. We've been participating with them for, well, at least 20 years. And this is one of those stories where we had a senior employee in the organization who had a connection to this charity. We started supporting them. And ultimately, it became really one of the greatest things that we've done organizationally, period, I think, in our history. It was that perfect confluence of our being ready for a project like that and them having a need. They had done all of their work inside of a barn, their therapeutic riding for children in our community, children who are rehabilitating from injuries, who have autism and other conditions that really benefit from therapeutic riding. And we and others helped them acquire some land and then ultimately went to the work of building a trail for them. And again, this was a collaborative effort. Our creative teams, we have a big number of creatives in our team. They were able to design a lot of the part elements that were a part of this trail, worked with individuals from Spectrum Health on what would a therapeutic sensory riding trail have. And so it really just became a project for our team that everybody embraced and got energized about, and was just a huge success. And at the end of it, we were able to have an event with all of the families who participate in that charity, with all of our employees and their families. And so it was, again, just one of those transformational times in the history of our business. So that brings us to recent times, and more recently we did a renovation with Ellie's Place. Ellie's Place is, again, a charity that perfectly fit our mission of impacting children here in West Michigan. They had secured a facility to operate out of, but it was really tired, and so we jumped in and helped them renovate that facility. And again, I think the message that you see here is that for us, engagement with our team, as it is with Kent Companies, is really the key, I think, to a successful charitable giving program. Yes, we give resources and dollars and other things and from our organization, but it's the time that employees are able to give. Yes, that's paid time for the organization, but it pays back in spades, not just for how we feel about that work getting done, but really for employees' engagement and energy and enthusiasm about our being on our team, and beyond that, that you get a lot of people collaborating that wouldn't otherwise don't otherwise work together commonly. So they go off and for a day do these charitable events, and it really brings the team together, and I think is a huge asset for the organization going forward. So for those who need more of an analytical and numbers-based approach of why do charitable giving, and this is probably an eye chart, and I'm not expecting anybody to see all of the detail here, but the impact that charitable giving can have on brand exposure in the community. We all know about the recruiting environments we're operating in and bringing talent into the organization. So getting your brand out there for a small business that's not one of the bigs in the charitable giving ecosystem here in West Michigan, it's an opportunity to get our name out but maybe more importantly, to co-opt that with the charity. So we work with the charity that we're supporting. Really, they take the lead position and we support them. And it's about getting these kind of charities that in a lot of ways we've aligned with are small and mighty like we are kind of on their way up and need that extra push. And so can we help them with some PR support and, making a big deal about that event and getting them some more exposure? Yes, it reflects positively on our business, and is just another of the many, many reasons that it's beneficial to our company to participate in the community charitably. One more program that we do is that I just thought I'd share with you is called Spirit of Giving. We have an essay program at the end of the year where employees can write about a charity that's impacted them, their family, friends, or others, and it's become part of our, unfortunately, year-end event we won't be having this year due to COVID, but we'll still be doing Spirit of Giving. And it's really kind of at the very end of the present of our night. We announce those people. We read excerpts of their essays or their kind of pieces about the charities that they're nominating, and it's just there's a lot of tears in the room, and a lot of employees in an organization, a little over 100 employees, face a lot of challenges in their family and extended family and friends, and just sharing those and being able to have that moment of recognition of what they've gone through, and have that charity that supported them get significant dollars from our foundation in their name has been hugely impactful. So that's another opportunity where we really put the charitable dollars in our employees' hands and allow them to be the ones to spread it around. So just a couple closing thoughts. If you want to go back to why is this good, of course, Fred talked about it feels good to do good, and it's good for business. And there's a lot of research out there that is now supporting that. As Robin mentioned, we won the Great Places to Work Award. They have a lot of fact-based research on being a great place to work, and it's real dollars and cents impact. So there's an economic reason to being a great place to work, and as I mentioned, I believe that the giving back in the community is a key part of that. Obviously, it feels good for you and the team. As I mentioned, it creates opportunities for people to connect, and that has to be intentional. That's not just writing a check. That's taking some time and effort to find those opportunities for your employees to engage. And this is an important one, I think, maybe now more than ever. It matters to your potential future stars. I can't tell you how many times I've been in an interview in the last 2-3 years where people have brought up You know, when I ask a question about, well, what brought you to the table here today? The fact that we give back in the community. Hey, I saw what you guys do with Vaudeville's Helping Hand. I thought that was really cool. That's the kind of company I want to work for. If you need another reason in this this environment of talent being a premium, people really respond to that, particularly millennials, I think, really respond to it, and that's the future of our workforce. So getting out there, getting you know, your name out there in this way to those individuals will help you build a team of future stars. And I like the word responsibility better than, or opportunity better than duty. Duty's a heavy word. You know, if you've had some success, it obviously feels good to give back. You know, I think I'd close with, as I mentioned, we're a relatively small business by comparison to Kent Companies and Cascade Engineering, and certainly by comparison to a lot of the organizations that in our community that do a lot of the big giving, the Amways and Myers, which are an important part of our community and have set a great standard for giving in our community. But the buck doesn't stop with them. I think regardless of organization size, you have a role to play charitably in our community. And it may not be obviously the title sponsor of this thing or that thing. But you know, in any great team, there's a quarterback and a wide receiver, and then there's a lot of role players. And I think those of us in the smaller business part of the community play a critical role. We can't leave the responsibility just to those large organizations, and it doesn't have to be big dollars, and it doesn't have to be dollars. Sometimes it can just be time or the talent of your organization. So think creatively about what you can do. Certainly happy to share any more of our experiences and anything further. You can reach me at brad@vaudeville.com, and appreciate having the opportunity to share what we've done. And really, this has been our team's effort. So I'm bringing you the good news from Baudville Brands on behalf of all of our employees. So thank you, Robin, and the team.
Thank you. In an effort to keep a concise program, we encourage you just to reach out with any questions or questions that you might have to either Chris and Brad directly. I am looking to close this program off today, and I can't do it without acknowledging Diana and all the efforts that she has placed on behalf of the members and the board of directors. I have witnessed her impact as an underwriter. I am honored that I was selected to carry on in her efforts to create even greater value for this association. So thank you, Diana, for everything that you've done. I hope that you were inspired by today's event. I certainly was. I want to thank Fred Keller, Bruce Young, Chris Fennema, and Brad Derouge for sharing their stories. And hopefully you were inspired today to go out there and do well and do more. Thanks for your time today. Hope to see you soon.